What I like about your two perspectives, they're very divergent, right? Yours,
Yeah.
Deb, is more anecdotal, and my friend used to always call it sending mail. I'm sort of peppering messages out there to keep a drumbeat of success. And I think, Paul, on the other end, you're talking about, I've taken the data and I'm correlating it and I'm providing some analysis. And I think for most of the folks on the call, they're probably somewhere between the two things, but you need to be somewhere between those two goalposts, right? Whether it's anecdotal or empirical, somewhere in there is where your evidence, your proof to get additional headcount might lie, but you got to do something.
Hello, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, konnichiwa, wherever you are. It's great to have you. My name is Eli Cohen, and I am the CEO and co-founder of SalesHood. We are excited to be hosting this great session on building and scaling your sales enablement team. What a hot topic these days with so much going on in the world. The enablement profession is on fire. The Great Resignation is happening. People are bouncing and switching, and teams are growing and expanding. And who better than three amazing leaders that I've known for a long time to come in and kind of tell us what's going on and give us some tips and guidance around how we can build teams. Amazing. A little bit about SalesHood. You know, SalesHood, we are a sales enablement company. We're the leading sales enablement company. We help companies activate their teams by learning together, by selling smarter, and by growing faster. And you know, we love what we do, and we're here to serve the community, the sales enablement community globally. I'm gonna stop, and I'm gonna be passing this off to Dave, who's gonna be moderating this amazing panel. But let me do a quick intro, right? First, I'm gonna do ladies first. Deb Sherpa. I have known Deb for many, many, many years, and we worked together at Salesforce. She was on my team. She was a pioneer in enablement and in role-based enablement, leading the way with SDRs and BDR enablement. And when we talk about planes, trains, and automobiles, Deb ran around the world, you know, powering and enabling those SDRs for many, many years. She's been in sales for most of her career, previously at NetSuite, and also worked at SalesHood with us for many years. And I love Deb, and it's great having her here. And she's now leading enablement at Adjust. And Deb, it's great to have you. So welcome.
Great to be here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And next, we have Paul Butterfield, another amazing sales professional, born in the sales organization. You know, I love hearing about his background. He crushed his quota in the early days and has had some amazing stops in his career and really leading the way with enablement. And just excited to have him here. Most recently, he's at Instructure. And he also joined us a few months back on a session, sales methodology and sales process and how to scale, and an amazing session. Paul's an amazing leader in the industry, and we're grateful that he's here to share his insights. And so we've got Deb and we've got Paul, and then we also have Dave Lichtman. Dave and I, we also go way back to Salesforce, and also an amazing sales professional, former RVP, and then came over to SalesHood and also worked here with us for a number of years, helped us really build the company to what we are now, and so grateful for all your support. And I love it. Left SalesHood because he saw an opportunity in the market. Guess what? There's no one doing enablement recruiting, and he set up a boutique firm called Enablement. Love the name. One word, all lowercase. It's awesome. And anyway, it's been a great pleasure to know you, Dave, and to be collaborating with you in so many different ways. And listen, Dave and Deb and Paul, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. And Dave, I'm going to pass it to you to lead this amazing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it is an honor to be here and with these people who I've also known for a very long time. I want to dive in, and you know, maybe I want to start talking about a few different things. So as part of getting to know each of you, maybe you're in very different situations in your companies. Can you maybe talk about where you are, your team, its structure, and maybe one or two big initiatives that you have going on this year at your company? And we'll start with Deb. Maybe kind of tell us your situation.
Yeah, sure. So I work at Adjust Software, and I've spent a lot of time in the sales enablement profession. It's been about 17 years, hard to believe. And as Eli mentioned, prior to that, I was a sales leader at a handful of companies. I've been in sales for all of my career. I have been at Adjust for a year. And Adjust, we are, our company is about mobile marketing analytics platform. So we're headquartered out of Berlin, Germany, and we are we're recently acquired by AppLovin, who is a US-based company. And I am the one and only sales enablement person on staff by design. When I decided to make a change, I wanted to really I wanted to become a real practitioner. I enjoy managing people. I love coaching people, but I really wanted to get into a company and build an enablement platform from scratch. And, selfishly, I didn't want to have a team of people. Like I said, I like coaching people, but it does take up a lot of time. And I really just wanted to put that aside for a few years and just go in and build. And that's what I'm doing. So I've been here for a year now. And I love it. I knew the challenges of being a one woman show. I knew there were going to be challenges, but that's okay. I'm up for it. And I just want to do things my way. So as selfish as that sounds, but that's a little bit about my background and what I'm doing. And this part two of that question was, Dave, remind me?
Yeah, so two parts, I guess. One is, so it's your team of one. So you're doing all of enablement there. I guess first question is, who do you report up to?
Okay, yes, so that's a good question because it's important. I report directly to our CRO. And again, that was by design. Everyone's got different take on that, but personally and from my experience, I prefer to dial right in to the person that's in charge of the revenue. And it works for me. And it works because I've done a lot of enablement coaching, and I think one of the biggest frustrations for enablement people, and I'm sure most of you on the call can agree, is I've seen some amazing programs being built with very low completion rates. And that is my biggest pet peeve. So I find when you report directly in to my CRO, he knows he's got a vested interest in what I do. I'm not going to be spread too thin, and he's going to support my program. So when I launch something, it's getting done. So that's the reason, and one of the reasons I like to report in there.
And you touched on something I want to pull a thread on. So, as we roll into 2022, you're talking about programs. What are a couple of big key initiatives for this year that you're tackling?
Yeah, I have a really good one, a big one actually. So just before I started at Just, they had just launched a sales methodology program. And I came in and I hadn't worked with it before, and we were really seeing, results. We were seeing, KPIs. We were seeing, seeing that it was really sticking. And I've been on a zillion of those vendor training type things. I often call them drive-by trainings because, they drive in, they train everybody, and then they drive away. And this one was really resonating. So I actually thought, as a one-woman show, where am I going to get the best bang for our buck? And I thought, let's take this program and really make it, weave it into our culture. So I am now in the middle of a train the trainer certification with them, which is a real heavy lift. But at the end of the day, it'll be really beneficial to us because I think, just being one person, I can't control everything, but I can sure help people sharpen up their sales skills. And and that's what I'm really focused on. That's one initiative. And then once I'm certified, which is in March, then I can start working with other teams, product marketing, sales ops, learning and development, and making sure that all of their programs align with this new kind of, structure that we have with this vendor that we're using. So those are some big initiatives for me. Yeah.
Big indeed. All right, Paul, you're in a different situation. So maybe tell us your world. Okay. And who you report up to, and then maybe some things that you're tackling in 2022.
Sure. So I'm Paul Butterfield. I head up revenue enablement for a company called Instructure. You may or may not be familiar with the company name, but you're likely familiar with our flagship product called Canvas. If you have kids in school over the last 18 months, or you've been to university yourself recently, you probably run into us. And so we are an ed tech company. 95% of our customers are K-12 and higher institutions around the world. I joined about 2.5 years ago. I was recruited here by our CRO, and so that is who I report to. He happened to be someone I've worked for twice before in my career, the first time as a sales director. And he wanted to come in, he wanted to have me come in because he had just joined and figure out how do we take what was, I would say, a sales enablement function that existed in the company, but there wasn't really a strategy, program, those kinds of things that he had in mind. We didn't have a methodology, standardized methodology, so that was a big initiative. And I've got a great team. Now, my team is a little bit different structure than maybe some, because my CRO believes that what bid managers and technical writers do is truly sales enablement at its core. And so in addition to the typical type of sales enablement functions in my organization, I do also have that wing of the team and someone that leads them. And I've structured the team around 3 pillars. The folks I just mentioned that are doing the bid writing and the technical writing are led by a director named Danny Wall. Danny also is my go-to-market enablement. He handles all of that. Now, when I talk about that, it's a role that I actually created and found really useful at Vonage, where we have someone on the team who becomes embedded in with our product marketing teams. They're there at the table during marketing development cycles, and they're working with the pricing committee, et cetera. So they're able to. So in Danny's case, he is bringing that early information back to us as an overall enablement team, so we can better plan, scope, et cetera, and be ready for the initiatives that are coming down the line. The other 2 folks report to me in director roles are Kim, and Kim Davis is my director of learning and curriculum strategy. And it's just what it sounds like. So reporting up to her are the folks that are doing the onboarding program, professional development for our various sales teams, et cetera. And then the third one is Brett. Brett is responsible for SDR enablement and also technical, I should say maybe more like tools, enablement and adoption. So that's how it works.
So how big is your team?
About 20 of us.
So a good sized team. Interesting. And so you're reporting up to the CRO because you worked together for a while. Right. And I'm curious, just on that point on the CRO, Deb indicated a strong preference, I believe, about reporting to the CRO. What's your philosophy on where enablement should live?
100% the highest sales leader that it makes sense. It's going to vary by organization. I have seen in one case where I reported to an SVP of operations who had also led enablement for years as part of his group and had really made a study of it. And he actually was also a really effective leader that wasn't a sales leader, but in general, very much in a sales organization. That's my background. I don't know how to think about enablement other in terms of hitting quota. And so I personally feel most comfortable in the sales organization.
Yeah, it's funny, as I talk to a lot of organizations and even a lot of people who work for organizations about what's working, what's not working. And I will say it can work in a lot of different places. There's no right or wrong, but I would argue, and I had this sometimes a heated discussion with clients about where it should live. And I always feel like, to your point, Paul, I think you said it really well, the closest you can be to the highest revenue executive is, I don't say it's not right or wrong, but I would say it's optimal versus suboptimal. But it can work and work under a strong CMO, it can work under operations. But I think, to your point, for maximum alignment, it's when you're with that revenue leader and you're lockstep on things. So I think philosophically, I agree with you two in a big way. And I want to take one little side note here. I was asking you both about some key initiatives. When I'm talking to candidates and people who are interviewing for jobs and moving around, one of the things I always have them ask of the companies where they're interviewing is, what are some key initiatives that Enablement's working on at your company?
Sure.
Because what I find is that gives you some really good visibility to how strategic they view the function. So they view it very tactically and working on small things, or like the two of you said, some pretty big rocks to move. And I think that's a good view into how they view the function, from a strategic or tactical perspective. I want to move on, and I think I want to give you a 2-parter to tease out here. So, right now there's a lot of growth and momentum behind enablement, and people are expanding. And I think one of the questions that people ask a lot, and they ask me a lot, is, how do I know when to expand? When do I add another head to my team to grow it? And the second part of that is, enablement is comprised by a lot of different functions. How do I know what profile to add? If I get one more headcount, is it a content person? Is it an e-learning person? Is it a structural designer? Is it a coach? I mean, you can go on. So I guess, how do you know when to add and how do you know what to add? We'll start with you, Paul.
I found that to be pretty situational, and I'll explain briefly. My first enablement role, I've been in enablement now for 9 years. My first enablement role was at a SaaS company called In Contact, where I was a sales director. And my EVP saw how I was developing my team. There was nothing corporate being done for sales. And he challenged me with the idea of stepping out of that role and going and building enablement for his entire organization. So that was my introduction to it. And I was an army of one for probably the first year to year and a half. And we had a massive channel partner strategy there. So in that case, it made sense first to go hire someone to mostly focus on partner enablement, somebody that came from channel background and could take on those things, because I just couldn't take care of the internal sales force and all those partners effectively. Now, when I look at, for example, when I got to Vonage, we had pretty good the blocking and tackling done for onboarding and that sort of thing. And that's where I created, for example, that go-to-market enablement role, and also needed to get someone on board that was driving not just training on the sales tech stack, but also measuring adoption, running EBRs with the vendors, that sort of thing. And so, as I say, to me, it's varied depending on where I was and how the company goes to market.
And I guess I want to pull one thread on that. Just when, how do you know when? Like, what's happening that you're like, I have to go get headcount? We'll talk in a little bit about how you get the headcount, but like, what are the red flags that tell you it's time?
I've always tried to find ways to only sell or generate revenue. Be really clear about that. But I've always found the need to find ways to tie it back to that impact. It's getting easier to do that. That's one of our big initiatives this year. We're actually going to be able to correlate to Salesforce data. I'm really excited about that. And what I noticed was, in doing that, I would start to see early warnings of when we were not having that impact in certain areas. And I would use that as my trigger. So I felt like, we're getting really good feedback on onboarding. We're getting really good feedback on, pitch and things like that. But the surveys and the verbatim feedback I'm getting tell us we're still weak here. I don't know if you want something more specific, but that's why, because it's a little different in each company where I've done this. I've done 3 enabling gigs now. And that was my early warning system, was putting in the measurements, getting feedback from my sales leaders, getting feedback from the cohorts that came through some methodology trainings or through onboarding, and then hiring to those soft spots.
Yeah. Deb, do you have a point of view on this?
Yeah, I think it's, it's always time to hire enablement. When I joined the team with Eli, when Eli joined our team at Salesforce, there were 7 of us. And when I left, there was 150 of us. So I think that, it's always time to hire enablement people. I think the best indicators for me, I'm going to be going through this soon, right? I can't be a one-person shop all the time, even though I'm loving it, but I can't. But I think you have to look at, look at your reps and look at what do they need? How are they pitching? Are they aligned with the corporate messaging? Are they all aligned? Are they all singing from the same hymn sheet? How are they selling? Are they having like value-based conversations, or are they talking features and functions? Are they attaching their solutions to the customer's big issues, like so their deals are getting closed, or are they sitting in the pipeline because they're attached to small issues? How are your managers coaching? Is it broken? Are they coaching, or are they focused on their forecast? How long is it taking reps to ramp? There's all those indicators, and I think that I like the whole scorecard idea. Is sit down, take a look, write down what does good look like in enablement, and just check off the boxes, and where you need someone, match that profile to that role, and it could be a different profile. If you're selling, if you are in front of salespeople delivering sales skills, you got to have a little bit of a different profile. I think you've had some sales experience. You've had to be, in order to have that street cred. But if it's, LMS, or if you're expanding your document management or whatever it is, you match the profile. But I love the idea, and that's probably what I will do eventually when I'm ready, is, sit down and say, okay, here, you've seen what we can do with enablement. Here's what other companies are doing. And this is, and I think it's a good differentiator for your company too, especially with this Great Resignation. You're trying to lure people into your company to work there. Show them what you're doing. Show them this is how we're going to help you make your number. These are our enablement programs. So so to answer your question, there's always room. Develop a scorecard, find out what that white space is, and hire for it. And don't hesitate. Do it now. Get it going. Go talk to Dave. Let's find you someone good.
Let's explore some of that more. So the idea of, all right, we're hiring, we're growing the team. So I always make the joke that no one grows up planning to go into enablement. We've all just fallen into it just through happenstance, and we've been tapped on the shoulder and something happened, we got into it. And so I think about different profiles. And so I'm curious with the two of you, what backgrounds have you found most effective in your enablement hires for your team, and any surprises, good or bad, along the way? Start with you, Paul.
So my initial bias was, for probably the first few years, everyone needed to have a sales background. And that bias, I'm sure, just came from the fact that's where I lived. And I know that sales life is unique, and can you relate, that sort of thing, right? We have credibility. Now, what I learned at my last job was that's not true. We did an acquisition. One of the acquisitions we did at Weaponize, we bought a company based out of the UK. There were two folks in sales enablement there, neither of which had a sales background. And so you ask about a surprise. Claire, who was and is an amazing sales enablement professional, had been a police profiler instructor for her career up till that. And the reason they hired her is they felt like, well, if you can teach people how to profile suspects, you surely can teach salespeople how to understand their prospects. So, and she was phenomenal. The other gentleman, Bruce, came from a pure L&D background. And so that really opened my eyes to the fact that, number one, non-traditional candidates can be exceptional. And number two, not everybody has to be in sales. And on the team currently, I feel like we've got a really good balance of people that cover all those different backgrounds.
Deb, what do you think?
Yeah, I've worked on so many teams. I was thinking like the profile. I'm with Paul. Like it's more about the person, I think, and their likability factor, and are they, able to speak confidently in front of salespeople, that type of thing. I've had some good luck with, not believe it or not, of course, but SRs and BDRs. I've had some good luck there. I'll tell you why. First of all, ideally, if I want to make every rep as good as my top rep, which is what we want to do as sales enablers, I'd love to hire like the top account executive, but that doesn't work because, sometimes that dip in salary it's not attractive to them, right? So they're making the big bucks. So the SR BDR thing has really worked out. They were, when I worked at Salesforce, for example, it was really hard to get an SR BDR role. They went through a lot of scrutiny and a lot of, presentations and whatnot. So I knew it were the right people. And hey, they got into the role. They did it for a couple of years. They excelled at it, but they just didn't want to get into sales. That's okay. Sales is a grind. It's not for everybody. And I admire that they knew that. And those are, good. I think back, those were really good hires for me. To bring on my team and teach and coach, and they had the skill set that I needed, but I was able to attract them because the pay, their OTE was in line with what we were paying. Yeah. So I think that was a good profile for me in my experience.
And Dave, so, one other one I should have. Oh, sorry, it was just one other one I should mention, because a lot of people may be able to tap into this. Is we have two folks in our team that came from customer success and training within our company. And both have just hit the ground running and are doing great work. So.
And it's funny. So I think both of you have debunked to some degree the idea of it's about your title and your specific background. So maybe it's more about traits or behavioral things. So maybe, and again, I don't want to assume things. So what do you think, for for a police detective, like what are you seeing in the people that are successful has made them successful? Like anything besides their background, like just their traits. What do they have that makes them successful? Start with you, Deb. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, the likability factor for sure, the confidence, being able to, I like, people that are open to coaching, that aren't, don't have that attitude kind of like I know everything. That's why I like that SDR as a hiring pool. I don't know, what else, Paul? What are you thinking?
Somebody who likes, who enjoys problem solving, because we're always challenged with those, we have to figure out things as we go. And the other one I've noticed is someone who actually enjoys, or at least has a propensity for mentoring or just helping other people along. And those people tend to rise up naturally within various kinds of teams. And then now they have a chance to go do it full time.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, the things I look for a lot of times are what are the relationship building skills? Because enablement, it's a relationship sport, right? If you're not, whether it's with the sales managers, the sales leader, or even other stakeholders, like if you can't build those relationships, you're going to suffer, especially as you go up the ladder to higher and higher enablement roles. I look for that. And also I think grit or gravitas, like this is something I talk about sometimes, is how a lot of enablement folks are inherently pleasers. They want to do what the CRO asks them to do. And they're just saying, yes, I'll do it. And they don't push back and say no sometimes. I think the best ones also can forcefully and tactfully push back and challenge a little bit. And I think that's a healthy tension between the revenue leader and the head of enablement. So my vote are also for relationships in that gravitas. It's a good combination. So we were talking before about expanding the team. And so putting aside like how you get the people, talk to me about how do you make the case internally for additional headcount? Like who do you make the case to, and how do you make the case? Because somebody's got to write a check at some point, and so they probably don't want to do it. So how do you convince them? I'll start with you, Paul.
As I mentioned earlier, I've always tried to find ways to tie what we do back to revenue. It's one of the promises that I make publicly anytime I'm in front of a large group of our salespeople, and that's this. In my sales career, I sat through my fair share of wasted time trainings. We've all seen them, all sat through them. And so my commitment to our sales teams has always been, we will work very hard with your leaders, with you, to create only things that are going to help you be more skilled, hit your number faster, etc. Or we won't ask you to stop selling to do them. And if you ever feel like we fall short of that, I want them to contact me directly, because we really take that seriously. And so number one, and I start with that because executives, revenue executives especially, appreciate that. Over time, the tools have become more sophisticated. My learning has gotten better at figuring out how to do some of these things. I use, for example, a strategy. It's called Strategy Mapping and Balanced Scorecard. I didn't invent it. Came out of Harvard Business School, and I adapted it for sales enablement. And the ways, because what that allows me to do is then go to my CRO in this case, or any executive, I report to somebody else, and show them, these are the top line financial drivers. Here are the elements of our strategy that I feel, and I can correlate reasonably back to them. And if they agree with the financial goals, that's important, then I'm talking their language. I'm meeting them where they live. I'm talking to them from a business standpoint, as opposed to, right, training or that sort of thing. And to me, that sets the foundation for not only earning the opportunity to go back and show some correlations and ask for additional headcount, or perhaps it's software resources. I mean, there's various things we ask for. I've also found it helps me build bridges with other members of the EC. CFOs, in my experience, they really appreciate that approach. And the more sponsors or secondary sponsors you can have, the better.
And Paul, I want to get very tactical for a second there. So I heard you bring in numbers and you're kind of making the case. Is there a tool? Is it an Excel spreadsheet? Like how do you package that to deliver to a decision maker?
Till now, it's had to be, again, the concept, it's called a balanced scorecard. And it ties back to creating the strategy map. If anybody's interested, it's a strategy focused organization by Kaplan and Norton, Harvard Business Press. It's written for enterprise, but it does scale down effectively. I'm really excited though, getting really specific, that within the next week or so, we are going to have live dashboards that correlate everything that folks are doing from an enablement perspective, onboarding, methodology training. We happen to be a selling through curiosity shop, right? But all of that's going to be pegged back to their Salesforce metrics. And as that data populates over the next few months, I'm going to have almost, I would say, empirical data for the first time. So that's a big initiative for us. And I get actually pretty geeky about it. It's going to be cool.
We love geeky people in enablement. Deb, how about you? What's your perspective on this?
Well, I'm salivating over Paul's answer because that's ultimately the right answer, right? And what you want. But from a perspective, from a, that one person shop, smaller company, we have about 700 employees, I guess. I don't have a lot of time to correlate data to programs. I just don't. I also have a sales ops team that I wouldn't even ask, because I know that they would be like, they'd laugh me out of the room. They are so busy and they have other priorities. So I'm going to be doing, and I already have been, and I've been here a year, is I just like to communicate and wins. And always, and Eli knows this, whenever and you do, Dave, you've worked with me for a long time. If there's a win, it's in a screenshot and it's going out, here. And that's how I like to make sure that I'm not out of sight, out of mind, especially with the pandemic and everyone working from home. But I like to use real live examples. And as simple as that sounds, it works for me. And I have a good example, like when I wanted to take the train the trainer program, because it made sense for the company and it made sense for me and my future. And, I would have loved to correlate the data, but what I did was I went into, we use Gong, and I wasn't really familiar with Gong back then, but I went in, did a key search for a couple of words that we use in our methodology, and I found some snippets that were amazing. And it was actually a customer. The salesperson just went through the discovery, and the customer actually, and I have the recording, and it said, you know what? I have been in this business a long time, and I've never felt more heard by a vendor in my life. Bam. I took that Gong snippet and it went up and down the organization. That's how I got my funding for my Train the Trainer organization. Cool. So a completely different perspective, and small shop, right? But that's that, and I'm always sending out like little, not these people don't have time for these big, long, long-winded stories about your success, but just shots through Slack or whatever, just always showing those wins, and it helps me build my brand. It really does, because then when people think of me, a lot of folks work in Germany. I haven't been out to the office yet. They don't know who I am, but I've got to over communicate those small and big wins all the time.
And what I like about your two perspectives, they're very divergent, right? Yours, Deb, is more anecdotal, and my friend used to always call it sending mail. I'm sort of peppering messages out there to keep a drumbeat of success. And I think, Paul, on the other end, you're talking about, I've taken the data and I'm correlating it and I'm providing some analysis. And I think for most of the folks on the call, they're probably somewhere between the two things, but you need to be somewhere between those two goalposts, right? Whether it's anecdotal or empirical, somewhere in there is where your evidence, your proof to get additional headcount might lie, but you got to do something. It's like somewhere in there, you got to take something. And so whether it's scrappy like Deb or we're orchestrated like Paul, but somewhere in there is probably where your reality should be.
I agree. Everything Deb said about brand building for enablement, spot on. You have to be out there sharing the small wins and letting people know.
And I would even argue even what Paul does without doing what Deb does is a miss, because people sometimes that's what they grasp onto. They love the stories, they love things. That's what will stick with them, and that's I think how brands are built. So I think it is they're both very important.
And I think too, other roles will see that. That's how Eli grew the team at Salesforce. We were doing such a great job of enablement for AEs and SR BDRs that everybody else wanted in on the action. And they didn't see these reports. They didn't see these correlated, they just saw, holy, I want that too. I want that for my customer success team. I want that for any customer facing role. So I think it's a good best practice, and you have to be confident, and you've got to do it. You can't be shy. You've just got to, you got to show people what you're doing is worth it.
So true.
Nice. All right, folks, it's time we talk about the topic, the Great Resignation. We had to bring it up. It's a thing, has been for 2 years. So let's talk about it. So I want to talk about the impact of it on team building. And I want to go to you first, Paul, on this. So clearly, with everyone playing musical chairs, that it changes how we do what we do from a recruiting point of view. What have you seen in terms of you building your team with the Great Resignation going on in the background?
The team that we have in place, I'm so fortunate that we haven't been impacted by that. We've had a very stable team, and they're doing amazing things. What the difference is, though, is that where it did impact is where we're growing. The market, I don't need to tell you, but the market is just very, very tight. And so one of the things that I found helpful, and this is something I've done, in general, is keep a funnel of folks that I network with. I may meet them at events. I may meet them at, I don't know, wherever I do, LinkedIn, and just kind of keep that funnel of folks that I think, might not know what the opening will be. I don't know when I'll have it, but I think they'd be a good cultural fit. I think they bring some of the skills that I know we still need on the team. And I do find that helpful. So I'm rarely starting cold when it's time to go find somebody. And I, so far, again, knock on wood, that's worked pretty well.
Nice. Deb, what have you seen?
I'm not building my team, so I haven't. I've just seen the impact from the sales team, and it's so hard to see someone that leave your organization that does so well, and it's just it is the way it is, right? It's happening. So that's the only impact I've seen, is just I'm training more people, and we're onboarding more people. I think that, again, your sales enablement programs, if they're done right, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And if they're done right, you can use that as a way to, for Paul will be using show and tell when he's trying to, again, attract people over to his company, because it's very competitive. I think that, the more that you can show there that what you've built and how it's working, the more likely you are going to have success of people even looking at your company right now.
One of the things that I'm seeing consistently, just from my vantage point, is that some companies have these pretty long, drawn out interview processes. I call it 5-6 weeks. And right now, the battle for talent is so fierce that if your interview cycle is this long, there's somebody else who's going to come in there and give your person an offer, and their cycle is like 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and they're going to take them, pluck them out of your pipeline and steal them. And I'm seeing, companies who have this sort of democracy of everybody gets a vote on the new hire, and we're all going to interview them, and like they're losing candidates because people are throwing money at people left and right, and they're getting plucked. And so I think my biggest piece of advice, if you're building a team and you're trying to kind of hire and you're trying to get your top talent, like take your interview cycle and shrink it to as bare bones as you can to get what you need out of it. And nobody extraneous, maybe not the third sales manager, maybe just one. So just as much as you can do, condense it, because it is, the average candidate is getting bombarded with emails and potentially a couple offers. And so the more drawn out yours is, and maybe you have a very big final presentation, that's risk for you to get your person, because top talent is getting lots of things. I actually considered having a poll question, like how many emails by recruiters do you get every week? And I would be scared to see the number of like 5, 6, 7 each week that you're probably getting, because it's so crazy right now. This is a slight diversion. I'm gonna ask this question anyway. Just all of us enablement friends talking here, do you think it's a good time for a person to make a move? Just a slight side journey here. If everyone's offering jobs, good time, bad time?
I think it depends on what that person's looking for. I've always been, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I haven't done a lot of moving around. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not. It's a loyalty thing. I'm a rolling stone doesn't gather any moss type attitude, but I can take that attitude, right? Because I'm a little more tenured. But when I was starting out, hey, I don't know, someone offered me and I can get a nicer car, like when I'm in my 20s, like, why not? I don't know. It's a good question. But the advice I can say is, for everybody, it's the grass isn't always greener. And titles and money aren't everything. You've got to want to wake up in the morning and lift up your laptop and want to go to work, no matter how much you get paid. So you've got to be really happy in your role. And I've personally strived for that. Eli knows that. Dave, you know that. I don't care about title. I just want to be respected, and I want to love my job. So.
Hey, Dave, quick, Deb, I love it. You know, we know we've got over 90 enablement people on this call because, you know, I've seen the list of registrations. So this is where we're really in a safe place. Should we run the poll? How many of you have changed roles in the past 2 years?
It's sort of happening in the chat anyway.
I know, that's why I'm like, let's launch it. I'm curious to see what everyone thinks. Back to you, Dave.
Sure. So while people are answering the poll, Paul, do you have a perspective on, should we change jobs now? Should we stick where we are? What do you think?
I agree with Deb from the perspective that it depends. And I also agree with what she said is don't chase the dollars. I would add to that, don't chase equity, right? Yep. Those should not be the only reason for a change. Remember, until that IPO or that purchase happens, equity is monopoly money. It can look really cool, but it's right. So that shouldn't be your only reason, although it can be a very compelling one. I also would encourage people, assess how you feel about your current team, the culture in that team, your relationships, the company culture. Are you being given opportunities to challenge yourself and grow? Do you feel that you've hit a ceiling and learned everything you can? It's time to move on? Maybe, maybe not. So in addition to the, you know, don't chase the dollars, those are just some other things that I would advise people to really think through and slow down, take a breath, you know, and make sure it's really the right move for you. It may often be, but sometimes you may see differently.
What do you all think?
What's that, Eli?
You see the results?
68% have changed jobs in the past 2 years. Wow. 29% has not happened, and 3% saying, shh, it's not public yet. So that's a lot. That I feel that, meaning like really I'm seeing the impact of that day to day, and that doesn't surprise me. And the numbers are staggering. We will probably never see something like this in our lifetimes again. It's a crazy thing to fathom that we're living through such a crazy time. Yeah, and I'll just chime in on this last point too. Working with so many candidates who have or have not made changes, my biggest piece of advice, especially now, is over-index on happiness. And it's a distillation of what the two just said, but like chasing an IPO or a couple dollars, like that's great and all, but in the end of the day, you need to be happy. And if the past 2 years have taught us nothing else, life is short, literally and figuratively. So like, if you're not happy, it's not worth it. If you're at a company and you're not happy, by all means, make a change. Go where you're happy. But there's too many good jobs out there right now. There's enough happening that there's no reason to be unhappy. But if you are happy, you might want to ride it out, see how it plays out, and see what's going on.
What are people, Dave, when you're talking to people, what's their big, why are they wanting to make a move?
Yeah, question.
So it's a lot of things. So sometimes it's a shiny object syndrome. Ooh, this company just called me and they're giving me this bigger title or a bit more money, and it's a cool opportunity. So there's that. And it's not right or wrong, but sometimes there's shiny object syndrome, and I have to talk them off the ledge of like, you're doing great, you're gonna get promoted, you're doing fine, you don't need to mess this up. Sometimes it's like I've been promised the moon and the stars and I haven't gotten it. So if I was promised 2 headcount, I've gotten 0. And so I'm kind of burned out of doing it all myself. There's that. There's also just like, you know what, like my boss doesn't get enablement. Like I can't get the time with them. They cancel my one-on-ones. It's not really a good place for me to do what I do. And so it's kind of for good reasons, it's for bad reasons. And so, but there's a lot, again, I believe there are a lot of good reasons to make changes right now. But for me, it all comes down to like, if you're not happy, that's a good reason. If there's a shiny object, you know, that might not be enough. How's that, Deb?
Yeah.
I'll ask one more question, then we'll turn over to the panel for Eli, anything that came from the attendees.
I have a few questions that I want to share that folks have been giving us. So I'm ready when you are.
Oh, let's do that now. If you have a bunch.
Okay, so thank you. And by the way, it's the chat's on fire right now, and thank you everyone for your comments. And there's a lot going on there, which is, you know, as Whitney said, like there's the chat's money. Right. So everyone's listening to the 3 of you and the chat, and we got questions. So there are a couple questions. One of them is around kind of Paul, you talked about correlation, and Deb, you talked about impact, and so did you. And we talked about being strategic. I think folks are wondering how the correlation is working. And, you know, you talked about maybe talk a little bit about what we're doing together, Paul, and that would be great. Because I think people need to see the how, just like it's possible to make it happen. And so maybe we can talk about correlation engine for a couple of minutes. And then Deb, you can talk about impact, because that people love that story, Deb. The Gong story is awesome.
So I think what you're asking, like, just a little more detail around what we're actually getting ready to roll out.
Yeah.
Okay. To me, the holy grail has been for 9 years being able to know, never mind showing executives. I want to know, my team wants to know, are we making a difference? Again, we're not just holding these trainings just to, you know, hear ourselves talk. What this new capability brings, this is a SalesHood webinar. I'm sure this is fine to say. So we've now been SalesHood customers for a year. Our onboarding pathways are all built in SalesHood. Our various professional development things, we're delivering selling through curiosity through SalesHood. So we've got all this data in there, years worth of various enablement activities, both for new joiners as well as experienced reps, that we know what they've done, we know when, all that. And so with this correlations tool, what we've been able to do is first and foremost work with our sales leaders. Somebody mentioned in the Slack earlier, the chat, there are so many metrics you can measure in enablement. And one of the challenges sometimes is finding the right few that are the most impactful. So we work with our sales leaders to do that. Work with our VP of sales development and find out, okay, what do you want to see? What do you expect to see the impact of these various enablement activities for SDRs? We work with our field leaders, et cetera. And so we've got these reasonable expectations. For example, we expect to see improved cross-selling when someone's been through selling through curiosity. And that is now being tied back to their actual Salesforce funnel metrics. And it'll take a few months for enough data to populate to really be able to start making some decisions, but that's what we're doing. And like I said, I couldn't be more excited about being able to measure in that way.
No, it's great. Thank you for giving that detail. So I'm going to do another question. So Deb, this is more for you. Folks are really, thank you, Paul. Folks are really intrigued with your TTT, train the trainer. And everyone's asking who it is and what it is. And you know, feel free to share. This is like, it's all good, right? I think
it's all good. Yeah.
They're a great company, Command of the Message. So you should go ahead.
Yeah. Force management, Command of the Message. What I like about it, and I've been on, like I said, like tons of these things. I like it because I'm all about bite-sized pieces of learning. And I find their strategy very easy to understand. We need to take 3 things from the customer when we are in a discovery call, and we need to give 3 things to the customer. And really that's what it boils down to. So teaching it is so, it's exciting because it works. And it's easy. And I've been on those programs where you have to memorize, 13 different acronyms, while you're on a call with a customer. Like, that doesn't work, and that's why I call them drive-by trainings, because you leave there and you're like, oh my God, I'm changing. I'm going to be this new salesperson. And then you fast forward 6 months later and everything's forgotten. This is not being forgotten. People are, I'm hearing reps. I'm hearing people saying, hey, these are the required capabilities for the customer. It's starting to stick. And we didn't do a lot of stuff to make it stick. It kind of stuck on its own. So that's why I liked it. The Train the Trainer actual program itself is, like I said, it's a heavy lift. So luckily my boss, my CRO, understood, and I was able to clear my calendar. It's hard to take that time because there's a lot of learning to do, but I'm really loving the program.
And Deb, how, like, you're a team of one, and you've got like so many people at your new organization. How are you scaling the reinforcement?
That's such a good question. SalesHood, right? SalesHood, I'm using SalesHood, and I can't wait to show Force Management, because I hope none of them are on the call, but they have like this old homemade built kind of LMS-y type thing that's just, it's not cool. But what I've used a learning path. It's like their companion. I've put all their role plays in there. I've used a pitch for everybody to introduce themselves. Like, I've got the most incredible looking path. I can't wait to show it to everybody. That is how I'm scaling. And that's how I'm scaling my job. I would not be able to do it without SalesHood. I wouldn't. And I mean that. So that's how I'm using it. And then I'm going to be able to do it. I'm going to be able to do this program and my other stuff as well. It's just going to take me time to get in a rhythm.
No, it's great. I appreciate it. There are a lot of more. There are questions on Dave, you did a great job answering the questions when you were going through. You know, folks were wondering what sales development meant. So folks were answering it. Folks are wondering all about the characteristics and traits of what makes great enablement professionals. And you did a good job. Everybody shared their point of view. There's a question here in the Q&A. What are some ideas for aligning enablement efforts to revenue gains? This seems to be a gray area. Again, kind of related back to correlation, but maybe we can have everyone directly answer this one. This seems to be a gray area as it pertains to tying enablement to revenue. That's from Chris.
Let Paul answer that, because that's what your big initiative is this year, right?
Well, it's been a big initiative through my enablement career. We just happen to have a new, better tool to do it starting this year. And as I mentioned before, the previous tool that I was using and will still has a place in the toolbox is this concept of strategy mapping. And it's not something I can give a really good TLDR on. Happy to follow up with anybody that wants to learn more. But the idea is that you start with 2 to 3 revenue goals that you feel enablement, you and your leader feel that enablement can and should provide uplift to. And then once you understand those, now you start thinking about the various elements of enablement. Maybe you're building a program from scratch. Maybe you're inheriting a program that needs, reorganizing, remodeling, et cetera. But you and your leader are aligned on those financials. Now you are thinking, or able to think correctly, is okay, what are the important pieces of enablement? What's going to impact, if I'm building a team, for example, what function is going to impact one or more of those goals the best, or the soonest? And that just becomes your roadmap, really, for how you go and build. And I know there's a lot to that. I saw that Stephanie and maybe some others are kind of asked about that. And again, I'm happy if anybody wants to follow up. I said, I didn't write it. You can go get the book. Again, Strategy Focused Organization by Kaplan and Norton. But I'm also happy to answer questions, because that was written for large enterprises, like the case studies of Mobile Exxon, Home Depot. And the trick was getting it scaled into what we do as an internal service unit. And so that's probably all I can probably cover in the time we have, because there's a lot behind it, but you don't have to have correlations to do this.
Right.
So.
Hey, I have a final question for you, Dave, then I'll let you three wrap up. Final question is, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Deb. So, there's been a lot of talk here. You've got, 2 practitioners here that are very experienced, and they are strategic. They project strategy. They're just, they understand impact. They understand correlation. They know what bad enablement looks like. When you're talking to recruits, when you're talking to candidates, what coaching and advice do you give them about being strategic and really understanding how to communicate impact? How do you guide people?
Yeah, I talk a lot about helping them. The phrase I use is weaponize their stories. And what I mean by that is, in what they've done, a lot of people have run programs, some good, some not so good. And I think people need to understand that the programs that they have run, how do you convey them in such a way that resonates? And so, meaning every good story, we all know, has an arc, right? Beginning, middle, end, right? And so there's a problem, kind of the status quo, the baseline. You did something, some enablement activities, and something happened, a result, some KPIs changed. And so people, the really effective ones are able, when they talk about what they've done, they're telling these stories effectively, and they're talking about specifically how they move the needle. And in doing so, they're talking in such a way that a CRO, a CEO will care. And I think that's part of what we collectively as a profession have to do, is we've got to speak their language. We've got to talk in terms of the metrics, because again, that's how we justify our existence. We're not a cost center, we're a revenue driver if done properly. And so I think the really good candidates, I coach them a lot on, you really got to understand what you've done, and how do you get credit for your work? How do you weaponize these stories and tell them how you've driven results for these organizations? Because if you can do that, people want to hire that. I want to hire Deb because she drove up, time to first deal and win rates, and and take that and bring that to my organization. So taking those things and bringing them from company to company, that's gold, because everybody wants the results that you've driven.
Wow. Amazing. That's incredible to hear. I just want the three of you to know that you captivated, so many people. Everyone has stayed, right? It's not common to be 55 minutes into a webinar and to still have everyone here listening, participating, engaging. Kudos to the three of you. Huge applause and gratitude to the three of you for sharing. And Deb and Paul, it's great having you as customers. Dave, it's great having you as a partner. Dave, I'm going to turn it to you to do any wrap or final words from the three of you.
We'll go around the table. I'll say just as a wrap up, thank you all for attending. This is such a hot topic. If I don't know you today, connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff, enablement, team building and hiring focused stuff. So there's a lot of content coming. So connect with me, please. Deb, parting words for you.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anyone out there that's in the same situation as I am, where it's, you're one or you're two people and you've got, big objectives to hit and you want to hit me up and we can have a conversation. I can show you what I'm doing and what tools I'm using to do that. And it's because it's all working out great and everyone's excited about it. So it's working. So hit me up.
Mr. Butterfield.
First of all, thank you, Eli, for having us do this. These are always a lot of fun to interact with the folks that are online. I'm having fun watching the chat too. Saleshood and Eli personally have been major supporters and sponsors of the Sales Enablement Society. And so my parting advice would be, if you're not a member, go become a member. It doesn't cost anything. There's a community of folks there that you will find very friendly and very willing to help you sort through problems. There's a podcast that's now going to be coming out twice a month where we're interviewing practitioners from all over the world that are dealing with the challenges that all of us face. And so anyway, that would be my advice. There's just a great community and a bunch of resources out there waiting with the A1 Society. And I'm also happy to connect. Any way I can help, happy to do it.
Thanks, everyone.
Go ahead. Just one more thing before we go. I feel like I have to say this. If people are having a hard time, they need some coaching, reach out. A big part of what we do is help people navigate jobs and job changes. So I'm happy to be a resource for the community however I can. Eli.
Thank you. Listen, on behalf of the Saleshood team and on behalf of the panelists, we're here for you. This is an amazing community, and we are just grateful that we can contribute and help each and every one of you be the best that you can be. If anyone wants to learn more about Saleshood, want to get a demo, want to see our system, want access to our community, want access to any of our courses, you know where to reach us, saleshood.com. And with that, we're going to bid adieu and say goodbye and thank you. Woohoo! Let's go.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.